Would love to know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 You can also tweet at Smooth981, and we're streaming live as well on YouTube. You can catch the live stream, post a comment underneath the live stream as well. It's Smooth981 on YouTube. And my analysts this morning, Chibuzor and Gbugbemi. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Gbugbemi. Good morning, Lagos. It's another day, another pay.
Indeed. All right. So we're starting off with this article that comes from Punch. So the British High Commission has said that the UK Minister of State for Development and Africa is prepared to take action against those who've engaged or incited electoral violence during the just concluded general elections. Now, the Commission goes further to state that they are already collating names of perpetrators and would impose sanctions, including preventing people from obtaining UK visas or imposing sanctions under human rights sanctions regime. And he says they are now confirming that they are collating this relevant information in a view to take action against certain individuals.
Okay, so this is something that regularly happens at the end of each elections, right? We see the members of the international community, specifically countries like the UK and the US, who take these specific actions in putting some of any individuals who have been highlighted to have participated in this kind of activities on basically no-fly or no-entry lists. And it's not only for Nigeria. I know this happens across most other countries where we have elections that have been either seen or appear to have been tainted by such occurrences like ethnic and religious profiling, ethnic baiting, use of violence and intimidation to put up other parties, other individuals based on wherever they come from, whatever they are, whatever they identify with. And for me, it's a good step on one hand, but I would actually love that one day we back home in Nigeria, back home in Africa, back home in these various democracies, we actually have laws and systems that can actually take care of this kind of things without having to hope or wish or wait for foreign countries to come and do it for us. We need to get to the point where some of these things are unacceptable to us as a people, and we aspire to higher standards. One of the things I see or have heard in recent times, obviously, is a call for healing and a call for, that the elections are over, let's heal. But, it's sad because one of the things, and I do encourage the fact that we need to heal as a nation, but we also need to understand our biases, understand our mistakes, learn from them, and let those who have taken advantage of these fault lines and have chosen to spread these fault lines and dig them deeper face the penalties. Because what we see is that these things are basically being weaponized for political gain. It's less about the ethnicity, less about the religion. It's more about political gain. So yes, I would applaud the foreign countries for doing it. And I do know that there are groups of Nigerians who actually have started petitions online to get particular individuals stopped from entering particular countries. I do hope that this acts as a disincentive long term, and it's just not a short-termish solution. But like I said, what we need to do is to strengthen our institutions back home, strengthen our legal frameworks to be able to take care of these problems also back home instead of having to wait for foreign bodies or foreign organizations to do it for us.
Now, I'm curious about these lists that are being collated. Are they based on speculation of a few people online? Are they based on intelligence that has been passed on from the Nigerian authorities? Or are they based on independent investigations that these countries and their representatives have carried out on their own? I'm just curious about that.
So I think, Zibby, that's a very good question you've asked. When one of the first few lines they said, they were preparing this list, and in some cases they've done some investigation. So it's also about the composition and how this list arrived at. That is also a question that needs to be asked, because we do know that obviously a lot of sentiments and emotions have run high in the last few weeks. And while we have people who are putting forward, people who have publicly come out and verifiably come out to make statements that can be said to be ethnic or religious baiting or have caused harm to be inflicted on people either directly or indirectly. We would have people who take advantage of this list to actually target their political opponents and all that. So the basis of arriving at these conclusions have to be verifiable. The basis of arriving at these conclusions have to at least give, so that it appears to be fair or is seen to be fair, have to be verifiable, have to have some level of independence investigation done before conclusions are made. And I think hopefully we have a lot of this information flying up in the air on various online platforms, on social media, where even the perpetrators or the accused perpetrators have actually come and they actually owned up to their statements and actually have doubled down on some of their statements in certain instances. I wouldn't mention, I don't want to mention names, but there are instances where people have actually doubled down and actually backed up there and confirmed that those comments came from them and they are ready to stand by it anytime, any day. So those are the kind of examples those are the kind of things I would like to see being talked about. Obviously, there are some that will sit on the lines of gray that need some more deeper introspection. But yes, you raised a valid point. The arrival of how what is in that list is also something that needs to be looked at. And yes, that's why I would actually prefer something that happens closer at home and there's some involvement by even the government to actually say, you know what, this guy has done this. And as a country, this is what we stand for and this is what we do not stand for. And this guy should not be allowed the privileges of having to enter your country as an escape route from what he has created back home.
All right. Well, let us know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. The next story comes from Punch. Now, the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee says it shared 722.677 billion naira among the three tiers of government in February 2023. Now, they disclosed this in a communique issued at the end of its meeting in Abuja just yesterday.
Okay. The Federal Allocation Committee, Federal Accounts Allocation Committee is responsible for apportioning the federal income or federal revenue across the states, the federal government, and the local governments. And as rightly noted, we see that there's been a reduction from last year. The truth of the matter is that the country, we don't have as much money as we would love to. And income is dropping for various reasons. For example, we're not producing to capacity for oil production, which is where we earn most of our income. Drives to increase taxation, moving along, but not as but not as fast as we would love them, as we would love it to go. And then we also see that the effects of the economy as well. So other income comes from things like VAT and other forms of taxes, and because of the downturn in economic activities, we don't have as much income coming from there as well. So the reality, and what I desire is a situation where states don't just necessarily wait, states especially don't just necessarily wait for income from the FAC, but focus a lot on generating their income. As it is now, there are a lot of states in this country that exist simply because they get some form of, they get this federal allocation, and without the federal allocation, they're not viable. We need a situation whereby the states can also look inward to see how they can generate funds. I'd like to also quickly touch on the fact that the very recent constitution amendment signed by the president has opened up opportunities in power and prison. So they've moved from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. And this also opens up opportunities for states to tap into various income-bearing opportunities to expand their own income profile.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd like to chip in something. So obviously, this boils back to the last elections that we've just had. So in looking at these numbers, this decline from January to the month of February, and this isn't new. This is something that's happened over the period of time. Also, when we look back at the decisions that we've made in selecting the leadership of the states and the local governments and the various units apart from the presidency, it also tells you the importance of what those actions are, because every time people select people who are not capable of making those decisions, performing those roles, this is what we have. And as your internal generated revenue reduces and everything is reducing, people get less, we have more issues, because currently there are global strains all around the world. There's global inflation, is not just Nigeria, it's global. There are lots of forces pulling on the people, and we need to get the leadership right and the election of our leaders right to be able to drive some of these changes that Gbugbemi has mentioned and are required for the state to be self-sustaining at some point.
All right, let's move on to this story, and it comes from Premium Times. Now, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has disputed the results of the 25th February elections in 21 of 36 states across the country. Now, these 21 states include 3 of the 11 that Mr. Obi won on, one as well based on the final results announced by INEC. He's challenging the figures accredited to Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress, who has been declared winner and is now president-elect.
So it's a bit interesting. I'd heard that we had been expecting Mr. Obi to go to court, to the tribunal, to the court to go and challenge this. And I think yesterday some snippets came out or some that he had actually gone on the basis of which he had gone to court. I'm going to be disregarding a lot of the things that were flying around yesterday. I'm focusing on the story, actually, in this instance. He specifically targeted 21 states where he said that various things such as, like you mentioned, non-compliance with INEC's voting rules, suppression, overvoting. And from our experience, obviously, these are very hard things to prove, especially at the presidential level in Nigeria. I am hoping that Mr. Obi's lawyers are well prepared for this, and I would like to actually see how this pans out, because because he's targeted the declared winner of the elections and the president-elect, Senator Bola Tinubu, or Mr. Bola Tinubu, as we prefer to is stated in this story. And he specifically targeted him and his, which for me, yes, while he's the winner, and that's the target for this thing. The impact and the actions that are taken go beyond the APC candidate or the president-elect and his party, and was widespread across various parties. But obviously, his target is obviously to get a ruling that invalidates the win of Senator Tinubu and gives him position of president. So it will be interesting to watch out to see how this plays. I always support that these cases go to court, largely because of the legal precedents and the fact that Nigeria can come out of this kind of situations better because of the learnings and the precedents that are set when we take these cases to court and the kind of decisions that come out. Because one, it saves somebody, another person, from going the same route down in the future, and two, it can hopefully correct some of the things that we have taken to be normal, or we are beginning to normalize in our current political space, such as especially things like voter suppression and non-compliance with electoral statutes, which which a lot of candidates seem to play hard and fast with these days. So it'll be interesting to see how it does, especially, and you raise the fact that in 3 of the states he's challenging, he actually won in 3 of those states. So it's interesting to see what he expects to get out of this. And I think all Nigerians will be watching curiously and interestingly as this thing proceeds in court.
All right, so let's take a few WhatsApp messages. Idima Puza says, technicalities are always used in our courts in favor of the highest bidder. I doubt those seeking justice in the election tribunals would get the justice that they truly deserve. And Ajayi says, my opinion on the UK's move to sanction Nigerians who've engaged in electoral violence with visa bans is an interference, not internal affairs. No election is perfect anywhere in the world, even as the 2020 US election is still being disputed by former President Donald Trump. All right, Ajayi, let's go on a quick break. We'll continue the conversation on the other side. This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. 8.1. We're going on to 4.
personal loss with Assurance. Get everything you care about with Consolidated Hallmark Insurance. Visit chidlc.com to get started. If you love it, insure it with Consolidated Hallmark Insurance. When I be young, and nights, places, you know, superstar. Hi people, my name is Grace, and if you want to music, stay tuned to Smooth 98.1. You're listening to Breakfast.
This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. The two analysts with me this morning, it's Chibuzor and Gbugbemi. Let us know what your thoughts are. 0809 444 981. That is the WhatsApp number. And of course, you can also tweet at Smooth981. You can catch the live stream up on our YouTube channel, Smooth981, and even post a comment on there. So let's go on to this nation. Okay, this is from The Nation. Now, the leadership of the NLC has directed its affiliate unions to mobilize for the picketing of all the offices of the central bank, including its headquarters in Abuja from next week. And this is over the current cash crunch in the country. Now, the Congress has also directed workers to stay at home and join the picketing exercise.
So they had earlier given the CBN a 1-week ultimatum to provide cash across the country. And they met again yesterday and then decided that from next week, there would be the picketing at all CBN offices around the country, and then also a nationwide strike. Well, if you remember, it's about, I think, 6 or 7 weeks now since the cash swap policy has been, should I say, fully implemented, in with the sense that we all had to return our 500 and 1,000, 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes. And then the president came and said the 200 could remain legal tender. And then there's been the Supreme Court ruling that says that the 500 and 1,000 can also remain legal tender till the end of the year. But the reality is, as it is, all this cash does not seem to be available, because if you look outside, the average bank still has a lot of queues outside. People still complain about cash. And one begins to wonder, okay, so where's the cash? So rightly, it's been said that probably the 500 and 1,000 naira notes have largely been destroyed, leaving, the 200 naira notes, which is fine. But then we ask, okay, so where are the new notes? New notes were supposed to be printed. Where are the new notes? It's obvious that the supply of the new notes is inadequate. And then if we also ask about the new notes, we also need to ask about the lower denominations, the 100 naira, the 50 naira notes, so 20 naira notes. We don't really see much of those in circulation. So it appears obviously that there's, the CBN is either really not printing cash, or is printing cash and it's not readily available. And the CBN hasn't provided a clear explanation as to what is happening. So earlier this week as well, the CBN governor, I think was at the Bankers Committee meeting, made an apology over transaction transfer failures that a lot of people had experienced, and citing the fact that it was due to the increased use of online transaction methods as cash is limited, and then one also begins to wonder, the banks should have or should be upgrading their facilities to be able to cope with these sort of things. So these are all the things that have led to this, potential strike action that is going to take place next week. And I just really wonder, what's going to happen next week, or before next week. Is the CBN governor going to put out an official statement? My belief is it's either one of two things. There's not enough cash that's been printed and it's not available now, so that's obviously why we have this. Or cash is not going to be printed and we just need to adjust to this new lifestyle where we have to focus a lot more on online transactions. So the CBN needs to come out and give a definitive statement, because it's not looking likely, that the country will be awash with cash by next week. And that potentially means that if we don't hear anything, in fact, if we do hear something, we're not certain that the leadership of the NLC will take that for a fact and run with that. A lot of people still depend on cash for transportation, for example. for petty shopping in the markets, so, and these are the two main things that people spend money on: transportation and food. So if you don't have money for transportation, you can't go to work. If you can't buy food, you can't eat, so these problems are really genuine. And, at some point I thought to myself, especially in the urban areas, why don't people just quickly adapt to this, online transactions, but the reality is that it will take a bit of time.
Absolutely.
For people who were technologically literate to be able to learn how to use some of these tools, USSD, online transfers and all of that. So I really wonder what's going to happen on or before next week, whether the CBN governor will address this, whether there will be some form of cash, either the new notes, either the lower denomination notes, either the old 500 or 1,000 naira.
All right, let's take a few messages. Daisy says, I don't know why a lot of people have issues with the UK visa ban for those who've been involved in election violence. It's their country, and we too, as Nigerians, should also have our own standards, and it stop involving them in our matters. Abbas says, we hope the court will put to rest the belief that if a candidate does not win 25% in the FCT, he will not be sworn in. So if a candidate wins in all 36 states and doesn't get 25% in the FCT, his election is invalid. We really have a lot to learn. The UK and other international nations are only thinking about their own interest, and they still see Africa as a continent that needs to be whipped in line. After all, nobody intervenes in how they select their own leaders, even when such selection have issues like the January insurrection in the US. And Emeka from Amuwo says, I disagree with the gentleman who sent a comment earlier saying no election is perfect. There's a minimum standard that must be met with every election, and Nigeria failed to meet that. Mediocrity is a major problem with our country. We accept everything as normal. All right, so let's go on to the nation. The Federal Executive Council approved contract was over 459.08 billion naira for the Ministry of Transportation and also for barracks of 4 officials of the National Drugs Law Enforcement Agency, which is the NDLEA. Now, Transportation Minister Nwaezeapu announced this while addressing State House correspondents after this week's FEC meeting, which was presided over by the president.
Okay, so FEC has announced contracts of these very large-sized amounts in this period, especially when when we need additional funding for a lot of things in the country. But let's see how important these things are. So I do know that one of the 2 items, which is the NDLE's request for barracks building, actually has been one of the things on the front burner for the current head of the NDLE. That's, I think, is the retired General Gbugbemi. Now, I do have some concerns about the construction of new barracks across the country, and if we look at, and it's based largely on the first thing, that when we look at the existing barracks for the police and the army, they are not in the best of states. They are largely have fallen apart. Basically, the living conditions that are not fit, if we have to be true to ourselves, for human living. They do not meet any standards, where we have sewage running across the places, smells, things. Anybody who has been in any of those barracks can testify. The maintenance costs for those things are so high, and people are not basically maintaining. They're overpopulated, overcrowded, not being maintained properly. And we're going to add to it by building some for the NDLE, which is not a problem. The NDLE will have to take up that problem by itself. I think one of the challenges I also have with the barracks idea, and this has been mooted by a lot of people, that with barracks, we basically separated the guys who are responsible for keeping law and order and maintaining security from the people that they're supposed to serve. So it also has created the kind of, instead of creating a service mentality where the average man who's in the security force, either the police or the army, understands that his first duty is to serve the civilian populace, or to serve, let me not even use the word civilian populace, but to serve the country, and the country means its people. There's a carryover of the military era mindset. And I know that one or two people have actually put out the idea that one of the ways to solve that is to ensure that they do not, they don't have secluded barracks, they can actually live within the communities. Even with the construction, the concept of barracks, is an old concept and is outdated it's outdated by most standards, but hey, it's open for discussions. But yes, the head of the NDA has gotten his wish. He's gotten some money allocated to construct these new barracks. I hope the money is put to good use, and they can actually, once it's allocated and it goes out there, they can actually not just construct these barracks properly, but also maintain them over time. So we'll not be having news coverage of dilapidated barracks in the next 2-3 years. That's one for me. The other one is obviously the spend on the Ministry for Transportation. We need to see what is done by the MPA. What the MPA would use to do with this. A lot of it is basically on fire service trucks, rescue vans. These are emergency services, basically, which are basic things that facilities such as the ports, airports, wherever they need to be deployed, should have today. So, well, that's a big one for safety and emergency services and security. Let's see how they go with this. But yes, I'm not such a fan of the barracks build-up. But I hope these monies are put to good use, especially in this periods where finances are scarce, especially for a country like Nigeria.
All right, let's go on to some messages coming through from the live stream. Ojo Oladile says, the cashless move is fantastic, but the CBN did not put in place all the different measures before kickstarting the policy. They should have asked all banks to upgrade first. And Mighty says, the military barracks are still in good state, but the police barracks are in terrible state beyond what most can imagine. And Gbugbemi via WhatsApp says the UK visa ban is on point. We're used to everything imported. This is imported justice. And Saratu says, if only the lower denominations of the currency are available, we won't be suffering like this. Where are they? What I find really annoying is the fact that POS operators charge you 300 naira for every 1,000 naira you want to withdraw. This is wicked. And that message is from Saratu. But we're out of time, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your messages. And of course, special thanks to our analysts this morning, Gbugbemi and Chibuzor, for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Zibby.
Thank you very much. Bye, Zibby. Bye, Lagos. Bye, Gbugbemi.
Bye.
All right. Do stay with us. There is a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
Insurance.
Thanks, Chibuzor. Bye.
Take care. Bye.